Most people spend their entire lives asking, wishing, praying, and waiting, and the more they ask, the farther away what they want to live seems to be. This does not happen because the universe does not listen. It happens because almost no one has understood how the universe actually works. The universe does not respond to emotional requests. It responds to conscious selections. You do not beg a catalog, you choose. As long as you believe you need to ask, insist, or convince, you remain outside the position of choice. And those who do not choose oscillate. Those who oscillate receive confused responses, not as punishment, but as coherence. When you understand this, something changes inside. You stop begging for the reality you want to live and begin to select it consciously. 1. Choosing is different from desiring. Consciousness as command. Desire is weak because it does not sustain position. It is born from wanting, grows in imagination, and dissolves in doubt. Choice is different. Choice is when you internally decide where you will live from, even before any external confirmation. The universe does not respond to the intensity of desire, it responds to the stability of choice. Desiring still carries waiting. Choosing eliminates waiting. When you desire something, a part of you keeps watching to see whether it will work or not. When you choose, that observation stops. You are no longer testing reality, you are positioned inside it. Choosing is not saying I want, it is stopping sustaining the opposite scenario. This is the point almost no one accepts. As long as you say you chose something new, but continue thinking, feeling, and reacting the same way you always did, no choice has happened. The universe does not react to verbal intention, it reacts to the internal state maintained over time. Choosing is a silent command. It does not need to be repeated. It needs to be sustained. That is why silent clarity is worth more than intense willpower. Intense willpower usually comes with anxiety, urgency, and fear of not happening. Clarity does not beg, does not negotiate, and does not ask for signs. It simply remains. The universe responds when you stop oscillating. Oscillation is the real block. It is not lack of worthiness nor lack of technique. It is continuous vibrational indecision. Every time you return to the same fear, you undo the choice. Every time you return to the same clarity, you confirm it. Consciousness as command is this: understanding that choosing is not an emotional event, but a continuous internal positioning. When this positioning stabilizes, reality begins to reorganize without visible effort. 2. Focus selects the page, continuous mental direction. Focus does not create something out of nothing. Focus selects what is already available. It works like a finger pointing to a specific page in the catalog of reality. What you mentally revisit becomes an active option. What you abandon loses strength. The universe does not respond to what you think about occasionally. It responds to what you return to consistently. Thinking sometimes generates no movement. Thinking repeatedly, even without intense emotion, focus is not obsession. Focus is maintained direction. You do not need to watch your mind all day. You need to observe where it always returns when it is free. That is where the real selection is happening, regardless of what you say you want. Many people claim they have chosen something new, but spend the entire day mentally revisiting the same problems, the same stories, the same frustrations. The catalog responds to that, not to the speech. Confused results are born from confused focus. When focus stabilizes, something changes silently. Euphoria does not appear, simplicity does. Decisions become more obvious. Opportunities begin to stand out. Not because they appeared now, but because you stopped pointing at everything at the same time. Focus does not tire. What tires is changing direction several times a day. If what you heard about focus made sense, pay attention to this now. When you comment, share, or decide to stay on this channel, you are not interacting. You are pointing focus. Every time you choose to come back here, listen until the end, or leave a word in the comments, you internally reinforce what you are choosing to live. So write in the comments a word that represents where your attention needs to stay now. Not for me, for you. And if this content is the kind of thing your mind wants to revisit, subscribing to the channel is not about following someone. It is about stopping pointing at what scatters you and keeping focus where something is organizing itself. When you understand that focus is just repeated pointing, you stop fighting the mind and start using it as an instrument. The universe responds better to those who point with consistency than to those who change their choice with every emotion. 3. Feeling confirms the selection. Creative force in action. Thinking chooses the page, feeling confirms the selection. Feeling is the code that informs the universe whether that choice is real or merely imagined. It is not momentary enthusiasm that sustains a request. It is the habitual emotional state, the one you carry when you are not trying to change anything. Habitual emotions shape the return. To understand this simply, think of something common. Imagine someone who says they want to move houses. They talk about it, search listings, comment to others, but every time they imagine this change, they feel tightness in the chest, insecurity, fear of making a mistake, fear of not being able to handle it. The thought says, I want to move. The feeling says, it's not safe. Which one does the universe respond to? It responds to the feeling. Feeling is the most honest signal of compatibility. It shows whether that choice is already lived as possible or is still just a distant desire. You can think about something new, but if you keep feeling the same way you always felt, the universe responds to the feeling. That is why so many people start motivated and then lose strength. It is not lack of faith, it is emotional incoherence. Feeling before seeing is not creating artificial emotion. It is not forcing joy, it is observing whether the body accepts that choice without resistance. It is paying attention to what happens when you imagine living that simply, without fantasy. If the idea generates immediate contraction, urgency or fear, there is active internal conflict. And conflict cancels the selection, not by mistake, by incoherence. The universe does not judge. It simply reflects the state that is being sustained. Now observe the opposite. When the feeling is compatible, the body relaxes, breathing changes, the mind slows down. There is no euphoria. There is naturalness. Like when you think of something you know you can handle, even if you still do not know how. This naturalness is the clearest sign of alignment. The universe responds to the internal climate you sustain when nothing special is happening. Not to the emotional peak, not to the visualization moment, but to the state that repeats in everyday life, while you live your ordinary life. When feeling and choosing come into agreement, the request stays active without effort. You do not need to reinforce it. You do not need to remember it all the time. You do not need to convince anyone, not even yourself. The universe does not respond to what you want to feel. It responds to what you are already able to feel as normal. And this is the adjustment almost no one makes. 4. Alignment is stopping contradiction. Internal coherence. There is a point where everything stalls, even when the person feels they are doing everything right. This point is not lack of faith, nor lack of technique. It is constant internal contradiction. You cannot choose something new and keep reacting as before. Desiring something while complaining about the opposite keeps everything exactly the same. Not because complaining is wrong, but because you are sending two signals at the same time. And the universe does not decide for you which one matters more. It responds to the set. Alignment is not enthusiasm. It is absence of conflict. When you are aligned, there is no internal fight. The idea of what you want to live does not generate immediate tension. It does not generate justification. It does not generate explanation. The body does not contract. The mind does not enter debate. This is alignment. Many people confuse alignment with positive thinking. It has nothing to do with that. Alignment is confident neutrality. It is when you can think about what you chose without needing to defend yourself internally. As long as there is recurring complaint, constant comparison, or fear being fed every day, there is active contradiction. And contradiction keeps reality exactly where it is. The universe responds when you stop contradicting yourself. This does not require perfection. It requires honesty. It requires noticing when you say you chose something new. but continue reacting emotionally as someone who does not believe it is possible. When alignment happens, something becomes silent inside. There is no euphoria, there is stability. And stability is the clearest sign that the choice has stopped being theoretical. When the body does not resist, the choice flows. 5. Action comes as a consequence. Inspired movement. One of the biggest mistakes is believing that action creates the choice. It does not. Action reveals whether the choice has already happened internally. Forced action is born from anxiety. Aligned action is born from clarity. When you are still internally insecure, action feels heavy. You get tired quickly. You doubt. You pressure yourself. You feel you need to do more to compensate for something. This is acting from fear. When the choice is clear, action changes quality. You do not force paths. You recognize invitations. You perceive when something makes sense and when it does not. And this drastically reduces wear. Aligned action does not weigh you down. It fits. You do not act to prove worthiness. You do not act to convince the universe. You do not act to relieve guilt. You act because that is the obvious next step from the internal state you already sustain. That is why two people can do the same thing externally and have completely different results. One acts in coherence, the other acts in compensation. Doing from clarity is different from doing from fear. When action comes after choice, it does not generate emotional exhaustion. It may generate physical effort, but it does not drain, because there is no internal conflict being pushed along with the movement. The catalog responds better to natural movements than to desperate attempts. It responds to action that confirms the choice, not to action that tries to create it by force. 6. Receiving requires space. Openness without anxiety. This is where many lose everything without realizing it. They choose, focus, align, act better. And when something starts to approach, they enter urgency and control. And that closes the door. Urgency closes possibilities. Control suffocates the process. The universe delivers when you do not squeeze time, when you do not demand that everything happen the way your limited mind imagines, when you allow the flow to organize itself without constant surveillance. Receiving requires internal space. Space to not anticipate problems. Space to not distrust everything. Space to let reality respond. Many people block exactly what they chose because they start controlling the how, the when, and the in what way. This is not care. It is anxiety disguised. The catalog responds when there is openness, not when there is tension. Allowing is trusting the vibrational timing you yourself activated when you chose. It is not passivity, it is emotional intelligence. It is knowing that suffocating the process communicates fear, and fear cancels openness. When there is space, something changes. Opportunities do not need to be forced. Connections happen. Ideas fit. The right people appear, not as a miracle, but as a consequence of a less tense field. Receiving is not waiting, it is not blocking. 7. Maintaining the state is maintaining the request, vibrational stability. Here is the part almost no one sustains. Not because it is difficult, but because it seems too simple. Maintaining the state has no glamour. It has no strong emotion. It has no feeling of immediate conquest. And precisely because of that, most abandon it. The universe does not respond to the isolated moment. It responds to the pattern. Maintaining the state is continuing to choose internally, even when nothing has changed externally, even when there is no clear sign, even when the mind tries to return to the old habit of doubting. Think of something common. A person decides to take better care of their health. In the first days, they are motivated, excited, full of intention. But after a week, the excitement fades. If they only act when they feel like it, everything returns to the starting point. Now imagine another person who is not excited but maintains small daily choices without drama. They do not pressure themselves. Do not get overly excited. Do not quit. They simply maintain. The one who changes is the second. The universe works the same way. It does not respond to the enthusiasm of the beginning. It responds to silent continuity. Maintaining the state is not emotionally returning to the old place every time something takes time. It is not internally cancelling the choice just because the result has not appeared yet. It is not contradicting yourself the day after what you decided. Returning to the old state cancels the selection. This happens subtly. The person says they chose something new, but begins to complain as before, react as before, feel as before. Not out of malice, out of habit, and the universe reads habit, not intention. Maintaining the state does not require constant vigilance. It requires conscious return. Every time you notice you slipped into fear, urgency, or doubt, you return. Without guilt, without drama, you simply return. It is like someone who decides to learn something new. They do not learn in one day. They learn because they return, even making mistakes, even without seeing immediate results. Learning happens because there is permanence. Remaining is the part almost no one does. And remaining is not standing still. It is continuing to choose internally, even when the external is neutral. It is not turning silence into failure. It is not turning waiting into emotional quitting. The universe responds to those who remain, not to those who start strong, not to those who get excited, but to those who sustain the state without needing constant confirmation. When you maintain the state, the request remains active, not because you force it, but because you do not cancel it. And what is not cancelled inevitably finds form. This is not a beautiful metaphor. It is practical functioning. Those who understand this stop asking all the time, stop testing the universe, and begin living from the choice even before the response. And it is at this point that reality begins to follow.